Hello, welcome to Wikipedia World Video. Let's talk about world history, shall we? First, let us define history. History is a science that studies events that occurred in past. It is not important whether those events occurred in distant past, a few thousand years ago, or only a few years ago. It is all past and it is all subject of historical research. Also, we can define history as a history of wars and military and political world domination. Just look at Alexander the Macedonian conquest of the world, for example, or the famous Roman Empire, or the equally famous French Emperor Napoleon, and many other world conquerors you have all heard of and are quite familiar with. But why is it important to study history, that is, events that occurred in distant past? It is important because the knowledge about past and causes of events in the past allows us to know the consequences of those events and thus predict future events. Likewise, it teaches us not to make the same mistakes our ancestors and other people made in past. The old saying is, Historia magistra vitae est, that is, history is life's teacher. How do we study history, and how do we know what happened in distant past? We can find it out by using historical sources. There are two kinds of sources, primary and secondary. Primary sources refer to eyewitness accounts, to historical reports of people who were direct witnesses, or even participants of the event from the past. Secondary sources refer to second-hand accounts, to historical reports of people who were not direct witnesses or participants of the event from the past, but only heard about it from others. Let's take an analogy. For instance, if you witnessed a car accident, then you are the primary source, and the news report a few days later about that event is the secondary source. There is also another classification of historical sources. It has three categories: written, physical, and oral historical sources. Written sources are ancient historical and legal documents, chronicles, annals, diplomatic charts, contracts, letters, and so on. Oral sources are myths, legends, folk songs, and so on. And finally, physical or material sources are preserved physical remains of ancient objects, like houses, fortresses, or temple remains, as well as stone inscriptions, ancient pottery, tools, weapons, jewelry, and so on. Written sources are primarily used by most historians. Oral sources are not considered reliable, though mythology can provide us with valuable information about past events. And physical sources are mostly related to another science, archaeology. Archaeology is one of the auxiliary sciences of history. On the left side of your screen you can see an archaeological site of ancient cities' remains. Besides archaeology, auxiliary sciences of history are palaeography, chronology, philology, epigraphy, onomastics, etc. For example, palaeography studies ancient writing systems, while epigraphy studies ancient stone and other materials inscriptions. However, a special place among auxiliary sciences of history is dedicated to genetics. Genetics is a science that helps historians to track the origin of nations and migration routes throughout their past. Chronology is also an important auxiliary science of history. Chronology is the science which arranges past events in their order of occurrence. Simply put, it tells us when certain events occurred in relation to other historical events. Indeed, the first thing we must ask concerning history is when something happened. When did the history of humankind begin? How many years passed since? How do we know that? Well, answers to these questions are provided by chronologists, because one of their objectives is to study the history of calendar. For example, most people of the world will say this is the year 2015. But what does it mean? Why 2015? This is the so-called Christian era calendar, and it means that 2015 years have passed since the birth of the founder of Christianity, Jesus Christ, though the exact date of his birth is not known. There are actually two kinds of Christian era calendar, the Julian and the Gregorian calendar. The latter represents the revised version of the first Julian calendar. The change was made in the 16th century by Pope Gregory XIII, though these two calendars differ only in 14 days, and that is it. However, if 2015 years or so have passed since the Christianity founder birth, then how many years had passed since the beginning of history? Many people from the past tried to find the answer. In most ancient times, people were actually counting time exactly from the year they considered to be the date of the beginning of history. For instance, according to ancient Hebrew calendar, more than 6,000 years have passed since the beginning of history, that is, since the creation of world. Likewise, according to the most ancient Hindi calendar, more than 5,000 years have passed, but not since the creation of the world though, but since a certain event from their own past. In the Eastern Roman Empire, or the so-called Byzantine Empire, they also counted time from the world creation date, according to the Bible. In Muslim countries, the first date in their calendar is the year 622, which is the date of certain event from the history of Arabs and their leader Muhammad, the founder of the Islam religion. During ancient times, there were many other calendar systems. Ancient Romans counted time from the year 753 BC, when Rome was founded, although the exact date is not known. This year is only an assumption of some Roman ancient historians. We may note that the globally used modern calendar is actually based upon the ancient Roman calendar, with its month names and certain holidays like the New Year holiday. And lastly, as you all probably know, ancient Greeks counted time from the year 776 BC, which was the year of their first Olympic Games. Again, this exact date is disputed. Basically, different nations used different calendar systems throughout history, though they were all similar in dividing the year into 12 or 13 months, each consisting of 30 days or so, according to sun, that is earth and moon movements they observed. That is why they are called lunisolar calendars, though some of them were only solar or only lunar. Also, many ancient nations used the so-called regnal dating system. It simply means they would say, for example, in the year of our king, and then his name and his reigning year follows. This system was actually used even in the Middle Age Europe. The most ancient calendars, like Hebrew, Hindi, or Sumerian, were even more similar between each other in the very beginning, generally taking the year of the world or first human's emergence as the starting point of their calendar. The main difference is that our modern calendars have fixed dates for all months and seasons, while the most ancient ones were not fixed, but more in accordance with natural cycles. So, how many years have passed so far? What year represents the very beginning of humankind history? What exact year is now? What do you think? Neither chronology nor history ever gave us an accurate answer to this question. Chronologists only helped historians create a periodization of human past. Periodization of history means division of humankind history into time periods. You must know that it is an artificial division made by modern historians. It is important to know it though, because it makes learning history much easier. There were many attempts of periodization of history in the recent past, that is, during the last few centuries. However, the standard periodization divides humankind of history into two main time periods: prehistory and history proper. The most distant past is referred to as prehistory among modern historians. It was the age of the very first humans, the whole humankind common ancestors. It is not known when exactly they lived. Some scientists believe it was a few thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years ago, while others believe they lived in immeasurably distant past. Now, prehistory is divided into more periods: Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age. Stone Age is further divided into following sub-periods: Old Stone Age, Middle Stone Age, and New Stone Age. There are also other divisions of all of these prehistoric periods, but you do not have to remember them all at this point of time. We will talk about them more in our next lecture. The only important thing to remember now is that prehistoric period refers to the most distant past of human history. Prehistoric periods of Bronze Age and Iron Age are rather considered to be the end of prehistory and the beginning of history proper. Modern historians divided it into several periods: Classical Antiquity, Late Antiquity, Middle Ages, Early Modern Age, and Modern Age. Do not be frightened by the number or names of these periods, because you do not have to remember all of them for now. This serves only to give you a glance into periodization of history. We will go step by step, and for now we will only learn about prehistoric periods and the earliest historic period. Moreover, we can simplify this periodization. We will focus only on prehistory and the earliest historic period in our next lecture. That will be all for now. Thank you for watching Edupedia World video.